All right, this is a video to Inmanham slash draft science. Um, Now you made hours of video, no problem with that. But I don't know if I have. I do have 3 hours. I could listen to it if this was more casual and friendly. I can figure out a way to fit that in. But of you just insulting me for I don't know 2/3 of that, not really necessary. Now, I know you're going to say, well, I insult you and malign your character. I believe you started it, but it doesn't matter. As soon as I got involved, I'll take responsibility for the part I'm doing. Still, it's related to the fact that you're in here saying you've spent all of this hard time and you could have been watching movies, working on this science, and you should get some validation for that. The problem is, the only validation you would accept is that you're correct. Now, I think by spending time talking to you about the ideas you've come up with, that's all the validation you should need. That's a compliment right there. It doesn't matter that I disagree. I thought it was worth my time. Now, maybe it's not a compliment because maybe I like spending my time on crazy ideas. I you know, maybe I like studying people that think the flat Earth and figuring out if they really believe it. And people that say the spaghetti monster is their god, and if they really believe it. Maybe I just enjoy that, and you don't want to be a kind of person like that I happen to enjoy. Whatever. We've talked about a lot of subjects, and I think you could be mature enough to realize that myself, Heithel today, we're giving you feedback that helps you progress your system, especially given that you seem to only be able to get energy to work on things through a negative energy of hating on something. Long ago, you decided there was nothing worth doing out of the joy of that, but rather avoiding the misery of something else. So you find things that are like remind you of misery, things, ideas you don't like, and dealing with them is how you get energy to then go and be creative, which is probably what you really want. And I'm saying you could take a shortcut and just be creative. We're giving you feedback willingly. And if you just were man enough, basically, or woman enough, you happen to be a man, so man enough, or woman enough, to accept disagreement, if you could understand that, hey, I disagree with you, but hey, it's interesting enough subjects to talk about, then you could also possibly get the energy to work on your system. The problem is you might have to acknowledge things that you would prefer to just deny, right? You don't validate any of us for taking part. We're spending time too. Maybe not as much time as you on your system, but we're spending plenty of time too. And there is zero, right? So a non zero appreciation for the time other people spend is a necessary requirement for your expectation to be somehow validated, that you're trying honestly, to be recognized. I'm also trying honestly. Hythloday is being honest. I happen to think Hythloday is wrong about certain things. He thinks I'm wrong about certain things. Most things, really. Anything that we would dig down deep enough, we'd find the disagreements. And in our cases, the three of us, we have. Okay? But there should be an appreciation for people willing to take the energy to do the conversation. Even if we're obsessive compulsive, because this is our hobby and we don't know, we just have to keep answering people that are whatever they say. And I consciously admit that that's it. So why talk to Quintica or something, people ask me. Look, people put in the time to keep producing a message on their side, then I'll talk to them. Sometimes they just have some fun or be crazy. I can easily handle a lot of that. Now, if they never come back to having the conversation, eventually I'll go like, well, I guess their phase of being a part of this is over. They're doing something else now. But people that will continue to engage in these conversations on these topics, whichever ones are of interest to me, good. If you were wrong or crazy or anything, that doesn't make you a liar. Okay, does make you wrong, and you're extremely wrong. But I wouldn't have to um, point out your dishonesties if you weren't exhibiting them. And yet, I do know that your dishonesty comes from a confusion and a whirlwind of denialism and whatnot. And then you're going to call me names. So I'm not going to answer you at all if I'm not in a mood where I know that's coming and I'm prepared to take it in turn and say something back to you about how no, you're wrong, right? If you expect validation, and you probably pause the video and go, oh, validation, no validation. Yes, that's a word, one word for what you're asking for. Some respect and whatnot. And don't cast aspersions, but you do that to other people. And the thing is, I know you have the willpower to not do that to people. It might be hard, especially given that it drives views. But we know it's possible for you, right? And so you don't have to do that. But you can't turn around and expect other people to do it for you. That's totally hypocritical. Which is to say, you can expect it, but it makes you a hypocrite to expect that. If you can't give that kind of respect to the people you're talking to, you shouldn't really expect that. And I would point out, there's people, because they come in and talk comments to me, that agree with your system. Why are you talking to me and Hythloday so much instead of these people? Doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong with them or don't have anything to add, but there's something about having a difference with me, a difference with Hythloday that generates energy for you to progress your system, which you obviously have progressed your system. And I find that interesting. It's a kind of logic. In this case, illogic. It's a method of inferring things that happens to have flaws. But I find that interesting. But you can't handle that I think your reasoning has flaws in it. That makes me a liar and just something so terrible and da 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 da. And yet, from my point of view, you misunderstand so many things. I watched your electron pressure thing. I haven't watched the 3 hours. I watched about 15 minutes of the 3 hours, and it's like this. How am I going to process this? I'm going to listen 3 hours and take notes. 1 minute out of every 15 minutes where something's actually said. But I watched the electron pressure thing because I don't mind watching you when you're not being that way. So I enjoy it rather, watching you when you're not being that way. So I would not, I mean, you need to, in my view, focus on what you believe, the ways we could discriminate. You can't expect other people to have to agree with you. You should realize that the people that agree with you aren't triggering your thoughts. You need someone to disagree with in order to help generate progress in your idea. And you could appreciate that without needing so much validation about your hard time spent, right? Just a little bit of validation. Thank you, Gary, for having these conversations with me. Thank you for keep trying to think up replies based on the conversation so far. No thank you for when you just blow your top in order to create a distraction so you don't have to deal with the fact that I have shown you pictures of water diffraction that you say don't exist. You don't have to call that a lie, except for unfortunately, you would have to adapt your ideas to this 400 years of evidence if you didn't consider it a lie. And I want to say one more thing. The debate between Huygens and Isaac Newton. There were lots of people on the side of this debate. Light is a wave. Light is a particle. You have to understand, they weren't saying light is some crazy weird wave from quantum mechanics or even relativity weirdness. No. They weren't saying it was some weird particle full of tons. No. They were saying in the classical model, because we're talking hundreds of years ago, classical model, yes, a classical understanding of waves, because people had noticed waves happen. It's a phenomenon. They wanted to explain it, and they did. There's a medium and the interactions in the parts of the medium or the medium itself, and here's the pattern. And particles, same thing. There's elastic collisions and depending the angle of incidence and all of that kind of stuff. And the issue was whether light was a wave or a particle, a classical wave, not a woo-woo wave, but just like a water wave, like an oil wave. Like an oil wave is different from a water wave because it's happening in oil. And the light would be happening in whatever the light medium is. Perfectly classical to expect that. The only weird thing is that in a vacuum, you pump all the air or whatever, something's still in there because light will still go through it. It's not black. It's not stopping the light like it stops sound. And the only question is, well, what medium is it? So the particle, and the thing is, this debate is one of the it didn't resolve like phlogiston. Could look it up, phlogiston, pH, in biology. It turned out there wasn't something like that. There was nothing similar enough like that to say there was that. So, nope, that's not how it works, people won. Well, initially, we started to see these wave phenomena. Well before we could isolate particles of light, we saw wave phenomena through prisms and diffraction. We saw it was wave-like macroscopically. Not until you could slow down and shoot a photon at a time, which can be done with a laser, and as far as I know, only done with a laser reliably in a particular direction. I guess there's a lot of ways that you could do it, but the way we do it in the lab to control light and of certain frequency, and you just slow it down, and that laser can be made to put out the photons at whatever rate. And then we saw the particle part. And then Newton's like, but Newton didn't just win its particle because we'd already seen these wave phenomena. I'm not lying about this, even if you think I'm wrong, but what's really going on is like, you don't understand what I'm saying, so I'm lying in case somebody else might understand it. And I don't appreciate that.